Hello, my name is Russell, and this is another tutorial brought to you by Wizarden, and welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be doing part one of a mini series, which will have the final product of being a public repo that you can clone and or fork. It's going to be based on React, Vite, and Tailwind. We'll start off by gutting it completely and configuring Tailwind to a good place. It's going to have a header, a footer with a navbar, and it's a great base for most simple personal projects. And of course, you can customize it as you see fit and move things around however you need. Um, However, for today, in this first video here, I'm going to be going from the perspective of an absolute beginner so no one gets left behind. And what we'll accomplish today is installing Node.js and Visual Studio Code. We'll do some basic Visual Studio Code configurations. I'll explain how NPM works. We'll get a bit more comfortable with the terminal and install some libraries. We'll create the project, gut out all the default settings. We'll add Tailwind into the project, do a little bit of configuration there, check to make sure everything works as expected, and then connect it to GitHub. In the next video, we'll actually get a bit more into the actual coding using React and everything else to actually make those header, footer, and navbar, but that'll be for the next one. And without any further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to want to do is install JavaScript. So head on over to nodejs.org and click on this button here. This will download and install client. Click on that and run through the installation wizard. There is a check we will do in a second to make sure everything is installed properly. But the other thing you're going to want is a code editor. My personal favorite is Visual Studio. So we'll head to code.visualstudio.com and click on this, download for Windows or Mac or whatever you're using. And just the same thing, run through the installation wizard, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. But once you have those two things, go to your app finder here and type in terminal. Now this should work whether you are on Mac, Windows, or whatever, and you'll be greeted here with a terminal. All we're going to do is just check that the Node.js installed properly. So we'll go node space -e, and we should get a number there. And if we got an error, that would mean the installation didn't work, in which case that just means you have to troubleshoot why the installation didn't work properly. And if you run into any real issues there, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to help as best I can. But assuming you got a number value here, that means that the installation worked. And you also got npm, and you can check that by npm space -v and get a value there. So that's great. So Node it's just a runtime that we as developers use to make web apps. And NPM is the largest software registry in the world and basically just the center of the JavaScript code sharing. All right, so now let's do some basic configurations for our Visual Studio Code before we get into actually working on the code itself. So the first thing I like to do whenever I get VSC on a new machine is I go to settings and I actually check the tab size. I believe tab size starts at 4. I always change it to 2. And all that really means is if we go over here to this playground, see that this is 1, 2, so 1, 2 spaces or tab. Tab size 4 is just this, and if you have a heavily nested object, it kind of just takes up a lot of space, and I personally just don't like it. This looks nice, compact, but still rather obvious where it goes what. And so I prefer tab size 2. Of course, if you disagree, please use tab size 2. The other ones we'll check as bracket. So type bracket into here, and then we want bracket pair colorization enabled or turned on, which I believe default is off, and the same thing for highlight active bracket pair. So what this means is in this example object here, we have an opening and closing bracket, and in this case it's yellow, whilst children thing 1 here is purple. So it's just, the brackets are just different colors from each other. So it's easy to see what is what inside of a hierarchy, which is just really nice. And the colorization highlight just means that if I click on thing 1, I can see that its parent example object here has this line that kind of goes down. So you can easily see like, okay, val2, that's inside of thing 1. So being able to tell at a glance where things are inside of hierarchies and objects is just really nice. So that's it for the settings. There's a few others like, I think those are the important ones to get you started. Extensions, this one here, ES7 React and all this other stuff. It gives you access to a whole bunch of these little commandlets here and functions. However, the main thing I'm using it for is just when I say I have some functional component here, some component.jsx, I can go RFC. React functional component is what that stands for, and if I press enter, it just creates the basic boilerplate for a React component, which is just super nice, especially since although admittedly this code would take maybe 20 seconds to write, typing RFC takes 1, maybe 2 seconds, and in this tutorial alone, we're going to write dozens of these, and later on in your dev career, if you're writing hundreds or thousands of components, the shortcut RFC is just really nice. So I do recommend that. All right, so let's actually take a look at npm. So we'll minimize this. We'll get rid of some of these guys. We'll go npmjs.com. And here we'll just go Tailwind CSS and click on that. So how I usually navigate npm sites is I look for a few things. First is if I'm comparing a few packages for the same say function, I'll generally check to see the weekly downloads and use the more popular one just because there's a bit of social proof attached to that. Another thing I'll look for is when was it last published. More recently published packages often are better to work with than say something that was last published a few years ago. Lastly, I generally just check the documentation. Usually it's just right here, or in this case they just link you to it right there. And then also I guess pressing that button there just so that you can actually take this command here and run that right in the terminal. So let's do that now. Now Tailwind CSS is actually just going to be basically a large package that's going to help us manage our CSS a lot easier. Some people find it a little tricky at first, but once you get used to it, it is a time saver and rather wonderful. So to install, we could just press this, but if we do this just like this, it will actually only be available at this path. So we're going to install it globally. So it's available whether we're here or actually at the place where we're going to be running our app. So press that and let that run. Awesome. And that's all there is to it. We've installed our first npm package and we're going to install a few more. All right, so next we're actually going to install, let's grab Vite. So Vite is just a build tool and it's French for fast and it works really well. So let's grab that, back to the terminal and go like that. And again, we're going to install this one globally, -G, and run that. And then lastly, we're going to get React. If we go over to here, type in React, and 3 months ago, 25 million views, or weekly downloads, that works for me. Let's grab that, back to the terminal, and put that there and install that globally. Now React is a library that kind of functions as a framework, and what it does is it lets you write functions that returns HTML, and HTML is just, as you probably know, the structure and building blocks we use to create web apps. Actually, a lot of people like to think as HTML as a structure and the CSS as the paint. Cool. So let's actually build this. Go to where we want to, start our project. So a CD, that stands for change directory, and go to wherever you want to go. For me, I'm going to go to personal. You just type in the first few letters and then press tab. It'll actually autocomplete, which is quite nice. And then from there, npm create Vite, and then we're going to use this at latest. And that's just because we installed this globally. That just means that we're going to use the latest version that's available here. And now we just need a name. So let's call this one React Demo. And we're just going to press enter and let it run. So create Vite, package name is React Demo. So we have a few options here. Vanilla is just going to be just JavaScript. Some major frameworks like Vue, we're going to use React ultimately, but quick. Angular is very popular. And So are all of these, and they all have their use cases, but we're going to just go for React. So let's go there and click that. Normally I'd use TypeScript, but this is a beginner tutorial, so we're going to go straight to JavaScript. And there we go. So cd, which again, change directory, React demo. So let's do that. Cd React. All right. And then npm install. So what this is going to do is Vite actually built out I guess like some key dependencies in the main structure that we're going to use to build on for the rest of our app. And there's a bunch of dependencies, and we're going to look at those in a second. But to get started, you're just going to want to install those. So you can do that with npm I, which is just short for install. So let's hit that and let it run. Good stuff. Okay, and there's quite a few dependencies initially. We're going to take a look at in a second, but looks like that mostly worked. Pre-monitored severity vulnerabilities. That's just something we really don't have to worry about. So we're going to go to the next thing, npm run dev, and that's just going to take a look at what we have to work with so far. So let's go there, get rid of that, and there it is, looking good. However, the first thing we're actually do once we get into this project is gut it and get rid of everything you see here, and we're just going to replace it with hello world, and let's not waste any time. Now, so let's head on over and actually open up our project. So open folder, go to where you have that set up. I believe ours is React demo. Select that folder, and here we are. Okay, so we do have quite a few things. Node modules, that's just all the dependencies where they're stored. You probably shouldn't have to interact with that too much, and certainly not in this demo. Public, over here, Vite SVG, that's this image here. We are going to delete that. And then assets, React SVG, we also didn't that one, so we can delete that guy. App.css, we are just going to delete it. Index.css, we are going to just remove everything from there. Save that. Main.jsx, that's looking pretty good to me. App.jsx, there's a bunch of stuff we're going to delete, but we'll get to that. And gitignore. So gitignore allows us to track only certain files. For example, we keep our dependency list in our package.json. There's no real need to upload all dependency code packages into GitHub. This is what Vite provides as a default, and it's pretty good, especially for our case. And ESLint. That's just a static analysis tool that will help us identify bugs in your code and enforces coding conventions. Mostly useful, although sometimes it does yell at you, and you kind of just get used to it. We're going to go to index.html. Actually, we're going to change the title here to React Demo. The rest of this is looking pretty good. Maybe I'll get rid of... I will leave this for now, even though we're not really using it, but the rest is looking pretty good. All right, so package.json. The thing we need to know for the purpose of this video is that it's the main place where you list your dependencies. Dependencies are just packages and libraries that your project needs to run properly. You generally install it with npm install, you're an add, or something like that. Your package.json will also define some scripts that you will use. For our purposes, we used npm run dev earlier, and also store some metadata. Basic readme, nothing really there yet, and our vite config. Good stuff. So let's go back to app.jsx. I'm going to get rid of all this. And my linter is going to go crazy, and that is fine. So I'm going to get rid of these two A tags. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it inside this div. We're going to call this React Project. Get rid of all this. Oops, there we go. Don't want that. Okay. And I think this is all we actually want for now. So we'll save that. We'll save that. We will open this back up. It looks like we are at the correct path. We'll go npm run dev. And we'll open this up here, React demo, and it should now just be React project, nothing else. So that's exactly what we were hoping to get. Removed all the boilerplate. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to configure Tailwind into this project. So let's go about doing that. Okay, so let's go to the documentation for Tailwind. So Tailwind CSS. Okay, and using Vite. So we're just going to grab this. We already have Tailwind CSS installed, so we didn't actually grab this earlier. So let's grab that. Back to the terminal. We'll Control C, which right now we're serving this in this particular terminal. So we're just going to Control C, which will exit out of that. If we refresh this, this would actually break. And there it is. That's what we expected. Good stuff. And we're actually just going to go npm I and this package here. So let that run. And good stuff. Okay. So next, there's a few things we're just going to put throughout our app. So let's go to Vite config. And we're going to take this import. And so let's go do that. Vite config. And just toss that in there, and our linter is actually going to complain because we have a dependency we're not using, but that's okay. We're about to fix that. Let's grab this and toss this in the plugins. So that's just right here, the config plugins, and boom, everybody's happy. We'll toss this into our CSS file, so let's go do that. We kept index.css around, and just for this, toss that in there. And we're going to toss this into our HTML file. So right now, for us, that's index.html, and we're going to put that in the head. So we can put that anywhere. Let's put that right there. Save that. And so I believe all that's left for us is npm run dev. So let's go back to our terminal, and we'll go npm run dev. Good stuff. And so now, if we go back to here, remember this was broken before. Well, so let us go and just verify that it's working properly. So easiest thing we can do is class name. We'll go margin right 20 and margin top 20. So these are just shorthand commands and the power of Tailwind. There's a whole bunch of little commands like this that you can just put into class name and it will manage your CSS in that exact way. The documentation is really good, so it's pretty easy to look this stuff up. So let's go back to our, here we go. So margin top, and I believe we did margin right when we meant to do margin left. Yeah, let's do margin left. That might make more sense. And there we go. Boom. So 20, 20. That is working exactly as we expect, and the very basics for Tailwind have been installed, so now we can begin to actually start to work on the project. All right, so the next portion is actually putting this project on GitHub. The first step, though, is you're going to want to have Git installed locally. So if you don't already have that, just go to git-scm.com. For me, I'm going to go /downloads. And that should take you here. Perfect. So now you just have to choose, whatever system you're using. Click on that. There might be one more step. I guess let's just check out Windows. Perfect. Okay. Click here for download, and it will install a client here. Once that you have that, click on that and just run through the installation wizard. And there's a million options here, but don't worry. You don't have to think too hard. All of the default options are perfectly fine. Once you have that installed, we can do a quick check. Go back to your terminal. And here we're just going to type in git. And this is exactly what you should see if the installation worked correctly. So this is just a list of commands. Of course, if it shows an error saying, command git not found, that just means the installation didn't quite work. You have to troubleshoot your installation. And again, if you have any problems there, just reach out, leave a comment, and I'll make sure I check those and help as best I can. And now we can actually put our project on GitHub. All right, so we're ready to put a project on GitHub. So first thing to do is actually add it to local Git, and so we're gonna change directory to our project. So for me, we're gonna go cd personal and React demo. Perfect. So now we're actually gonna use Git. To start off with, all you have to do is put in git init, And we now have initialized our local Git repository. And at this point, there's just a few simple commands. So the first one is git add, and we're just going to put a dot. Dot just means add everything in this folder. If we put in, say, like one of our file names, such as git add html dot or index.html, it would just add that particular file. But we're adding everything, so put that. Good stuff. Now we're going to go git commit -m and leave a comment. So normally, this as the first commit, you go initial commit. However, I'm going to add a few extra comments. Create project in Vite with React and basic setup of Tailwind. And make sure you add the closing quotation mark and enter. So now you see all of these things have been inserted. So at this point, we now are ready to actually upload it to GitHub. So we actually have to go to GitHub. So let's do that, github.com. And we're going to go here to create new repository. So choose an owner, I'm going to choose myself, and I'm just going to call this React Vite Tailwind template. The description is optional. We're going to go to React Vite and Tailwind basic web app template. Perfect. We'll keep this public. We'll leave the rest of this as is, and we'll create repository. And now GitHub is actually pretty helpful. It gives us all the commands we'll need. So git branch this one here. So we basically can just run these in order. We already did this one. We don't really need this. We did do this. So let's do that. We'll go grab this, put this over here, toss that in. Good stuff. Come back, grab this one, copy that. Boom, toss that in. And finally, we'll grab this one here. And basically what we're doing is we're basically connecting our local Git to our GitHub and kind of creating a connection there. And this is just pushing what we have staged to the actual GitHub. So let's go back and actually run that final line. And we should see perfect. So now, if we go back to code, we should see everything we have. And this is looking pretty good. There shouldn't be too much in here yet, as we just did some basic setup of things, but this is looking exactly like what we expected to see. So that's all there is to that. All right, so that'll be a wrap for today. Quickly, what we accomplished today was we got NodeJS installed, verified that, Visual Studio Code installed, and a little bit of configuration there. We got a bit more familiar with the terminal, and we installed a few libraries through npm. We created the project using Vite, and we got all the default settings. We added Tailwind to the project, and we got the basic setup for that done. There's a bit more configuration we'll do in the next video, but we got basic working configuration ready for today. We checked everything works as expected, and we put it up on GitHub, and that's a great start. In the next video, we'll do a bit more Tailwind configuration, customize it to how we'll actually be using it in our project. We're going to create a header, a footer, a navbar, and a few template pages that we can navigate around with. And that should be all there is to it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Again, my name is Russell. This has been brought to you by Wizarden. Click like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next one. Y'all take care.